Hi friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thank you for joining me in my craft room today. I'm so grateful to have you here. I'm going to be sharing some of the brand new products from the latest release of Pretty Pink Posh to make a fun little margarita shaker card. So I have my jar for my drink ready to go from the spring jar stamp set. I have some citrus that I colored all to look like limes in this nice border, and then I stamped and colored some lime and leaf images that I'm going to be adding to my card. Also die cut a few different elements from the fruit mug edition, as well as some smile die cuts, so I can create my sentiment when I'm assembling the card together. But we're going to go ahead and get started on some ink blending through the new layered citrus stencils. So I'm going to be starting with the A stencil, which has the little different sections of the citrus. I probably should have Googled what that's called before I started recording, but the little fruit sections. And I'm going to be using my gloss mat to help me with layering my stencils and making sure that I have everything lined up well. I have a piece of 6x6 white cardstock, and I went ahead and taped that down to the center of my glass mat, and then I'm using my magnets to keep my stencil in place. This first layer, I'm going to add in some twisted citron through my fruit, the little triangle openings. And then I'm going to layer on B, and this time I'm using Mowed Lawn to be the rind or the outside of my limes. And I did go a little heavier on one side of my stencil and a little lighter as it progressed over to the left. That way it would just kind of have a gradient look to my background. And finally, for C, the little juice coming out of my limes, I'm using some lunar paste in the color Later Gator by Simon Hurley and Ranger Ink, and just using a palette knife to add in that stencil paste through the openings on my stencil. A little bit goes a long way with this, so I just wipe up any of that excess until I finish off adding all of the lunar paste, and then made sure to save any excess. Love a good stencil reveal. So here is our background with our lines. I'll do a little bit of a close-up so you can see how cute and that gradient look from going heavy-handed on the ink on one side to it being lighter on the other. I'm going to die cut an opening into my spring jar, and for this I just grabbed the graduation mug editions. There's this really nice kind of rounded corner rectangle that fit perfectly inside of the jar. So using this so I don't have to, cut delicately on the inside of my image. So I'm using some repositionable tape just to keep that die in place, and I'm going to run it through my little mini die cut machine since it fits so perfectly, and I can just easily put this away when I'm done. So here is what my jar looks like with the opening, and I'm going to save that opening piece to add some color onto that backing. And I'm going to grab that twisted citron again to color in that piece. I want it to look like a nice limey margarita in my glass jar drink. I found an Oh Hoo Hoo art marker that I thought matched the color really, really well. So I'm going to draw in the top of my drink with this color and fill in around the edge of that opening so it looks like there is, some green margarita in my jar. I don't go all the way to the edge, just like a glass. There's kind of a little bit of a thickness to it that I have colored in with a really pale blue color. And that's just to give, again, a look of actual glass. So once I am done coloring in my drink, you can see it actually matches quite perfectly. I was pretty impressed. I'm going to start building my shaker together. So I die cut the jar out of some white cardstock as well as some acetate. And first I'm going to start with gluing my die cut rectangle to the backing of my shaker card. So using the front part where I die cut this rectangle from as a guide, I'm adding glue to the back and gluing that through the opening onto the back of my shaker card or my shaker element. Next, I'm going to add some double-sided adhesive around all four sides of my opening on the front shaker, the actual stamped jar, and I'm adding some acetate to the back of that. I did die cut it out. It didn't go all the way through because this is really thick acetate, so I just used my scissors to cut anywhere the dye didn't cut through the acetate. Now I have some double-sided foam adhesive, but this is like a slightly thicker than average foam adhesive. Heavy Doodle has a really great thickness that I like. These were gifted to me from another company that ended up not selling them, so I'm not going to say what it is, but I definitely recommend Heavy Doodle's foam adhesive. I just want to make sure I use up what I have in my stash before I buy anything new. So I'm using that to wrap all the way around my opening, making sure that where I had to add a second piece, it was really snug up against the foam adhesive, so there's no area for my little clay bits to fall out. And I'm using the new clay confetti from Pretty Pink Posh as well, called lemon lime mix, which of course is perfect for margarita, right? And I'm going to grab that straw that I die cut from the new mug edition dies, and I'm going to glue that to the back of my shaker, so on that same jar that has my green rectangle. I also die cut a couple ice cubes out of some holographic cardstock, and I wanted those to fit nicely in my shaker, so I did take out a few bits of those little jimmies to make sure I had plenty of room for my ice cubes to shake around. And then I'm going to add the backing, so close up that shaker. So I have foam adhesive all around my opening, and I should have added a little bit to the top of my jar. I forgot, so I'm going to realize that here. And I'm going to cut a piece of foam adhesive and just go ahead and shove that in between the two layers, so that way there's some stability at the top of my jar. So I'll go ahead and set that aside after I give it a good couple shakes, and I think it looks really cute with the ice cubes. And I'm going to now work on the lime that's going to sit on the rim of my drink. So I want it to have like a cute little lime that's hanging onto the edge of my jar. So I'm going to cut a little opening on my lime. Because of that foam adhesive, I have to trim it more like a wider opening, so that way it can tuck in better behind the edge of the jar. And once I'm happy with how it's going to look, I go ahead and pop out all of the little triangle pieces that I want the lighter green lime to kind of shine through. So in order for those little pieces on the light green part of my lime to not fall out, I'm going to add glue to the back side of my green lime, and then I'm just using some mint tape to be kind of like a backing for that. So I added the glue and then I added the mint tape, and now I'm just trimming off the excess. So that will just keep that little light green lime intact, and then I can glue this darker piece, which is more like the rind of the lime, around the edge, so it just fits perfectly right on top. I'm going to grab some sharp scissors and really cut into that opening again, so that way it lines up with the dark green color. So there's this nice little kind of slot where I can layer that onto my jar drink here. So you can see how it's going to look. And when I'm happy with it, I'm going to use some wet glue to glue that to the jar. So a little bit of glue on the front where it tucks behind the edge of the jar, and glue on the back where it will lay on top of my little margarita drink. I'm moving on to my sentiment. I die cut the smile sentiment, so the shadow part, 3 times out of some white cardstock, and then I cut the thinner word die of scripty smile out of some blue shimmery cardstock. It's the same one that I used for my straw. All of the green and blue cardstocks are from one of my Your Paper Insider boxes, I believe the first one. But I'm pretty excited about how all of these colors are just really working so well together. I'm really loving this card so far. So I have my shiny blue smile, and there is the little tittle of the eye, and I don't want to lose it, so I added some glue after layering all 3 of those white smile die cuts together. I'm adding some glue to where that little tittle needs to go, and I just pressed it through with a pokey tool and made sure that any of the excess glue was wiped up. Now I went ahead and punched out anything that needed to be removed from the rest of the smile sentiment, and I'm using my glue with a fine point tip to just go ahead and add glue all behind that script word smile. And I'm going to glue this to the shadow part. It fits just perfectly together. You could also use this shadow die with the hot foil plate that also says smile, but I really wanted that same blue shimmer as the rest of my card, like that straw. So I went ahead and just used the die cut this time. I grabbed everything now that my background is dry and all of my pieces are assembled and ready to go. And I'm going to trim down my lime background. And I trimmed it to 3 3/4 by 5. So there is a 1/4 inch border all the way around. And as I was layering everything together, like my lime border, my smile sentiment, my limes, I just felt like the white background of my limes was too stark white onto my white card base. That was a lot of white in that sentence, but I think you know what I mean. I think it looks really great like this, but I really wanted more of that bold sparkle. So I'm going to cut another piece of that blue cardstock, that sparkly blue cardstock, to fit behind my lime background. So I'm going to trim this just slightly smaller than an A2 size. And then I went ahead and cut out the center of it since you're not going to see it, and thou shalt not waste cardstock in this craft room. So I cut the middle as you're not going to see it. And here I have it glued down to my A2 card base. And now I'm going to add adhesive to my lime background. And I'm going to add just a little bit of wet glue just around the edges because it's adhering to sparkly paper. And I want to make sure that that adhesive has like a really good grip on that sparkly cardstock. And I just really like this. I think it just added a lot more to the card. It's so much more bold and colorful. So I'm pretty pleased that I added this extra layer of blue sparkle cardstock. I'm gluing pardon my hair, I'm gluing my lime border that I colored. There are some round fruits in there, but I colored them green anyway, just because I thought maybe it's the lime and you're looking at it from the side where you can't tell it's more of an oval shape. So I colored them all this really pretty green that matched the colors I chose for my stenciled background, just adding a little fun detail from that Fruit Borders stamp set. Next, I'm gluing on my margarita shaker element. I'm using my grid mat just to help me with placing because I want it to look centered to the card, but just above that fruit border. So there's plenty of room for my smile sentiment without completely covering all of those pretty limes that I colored in the border. I'm grabbing some foam adhesive. It's the same thickness as my shaker, and I add it to the bottom of my sentiment and then added wet glue to the top of my sentiment as it's going to overlap my shaker element. And once that's adhered, I'm going to realize that I should have glued down my lime first because I can't tuck it underneath. But that's okay. I'm just going to trim it down because it's not like you can see it anyway, and it tucks under nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and use some wet glue to glue my lime in place. And then I'll also glue the smaller green leaf, just using, again, wet glue. That way I have a little bit of wiggle room to make sure my images are in place before it secures too strongly. And I'm grabbing my tweezers to help me with the smaller images to tuck them around the card. For my lime slice, I decided to pop it up just a little bit, so not the same thickness as my shaker element. So just grab some general foam squares. These are from scrapbook.com. And I remember to glue my leaf down first. So I glued down the larger leaf, and then I'm pulling off the release paper behind my lime slice and tucking that in where I liked it on the card. And then finally adding in those little lime juice coming out of my lime slice right there above. I just think it looks so cute and it matches the stenciled background. So here's a final look at my Smile Margarita card with lots of limey goodness using products from Pretty Pink Posh. I love the holographic ice cubes inside. I think it really just adds more to the card. I hope you enjoyed this cute margarita card and that you love all of the new products from Pretty Pink Posh just as much as I do. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!